October 10th, 2016. Guys, you're looking at images that are just over 4 months old. They were taken in June 2016 of what the ancients called NIBIRU. You're looking at 3 of the orbital planets or planetary moons or planetoids. Here, if we back out, you'll get 4, and they're going to show an animation of events. Again, Juno spacecraft after it went through the asteroid belt. You can see one in the top right. We'll go into an animation. They're paying very close attention to this, and they're glad that people that don't understand mythology and the way that this breaks down, they're glad that people are not watching Jupiter, which this is, and these are 4 of its major moons, which is only 4 out of over 60 of the moons. And the size that we're dealing with here, guys, is kind of beyond scale. Jupiter itself, called NIBIRU by the ancient Anunnaki, the Phoenicians, the Greeks, the Romans, all of this ties together, just the way one thing is handed down from generation to generation and from empire to empire. But guys, we're going to go into that, but I want you to pay attention to what we're looking at and why I'm saying this. As long as they've got people thinking about something coming in from a faraway galaxy, they're not going to see what's right under their noses. And we've got some strange orbits going on here. First, you're looking at the 4 Galilean moons discovered by Galileo, because you couldn't see the other smaller ones at that time. Europa, Ganymede, Callisto, and Io. Europa is ice planet, guys. They're really checking this thing out because it's got water and ice on it. But these physical orbital characteristics of the moons vary widely. These 4 Galileans are all over 3,100 kilometers or 1,900 miles. The largest, Ganymede, the second one, is the 9th largest object in our solar system after the sun and the 7 planets, Ganymede being larger than Mercury. Think about that. The other Jovian moons are less than 250 kilometers. Think about that, 160 miles wide. Now, picture something just on the other side of the asteroid belt, spinning with over 60 moons. Look at this object from the ancient Sumerians. It's a star or planet, but many people call Jupiter a gas giant. And what that image shows is a 6-pointed star. We'll get into that, but there's 67 known moons of Jupiter. This gives Jupiter the largest number of moons with reasonably stable orbits of any planet in the solar system. The most massive of the moons are the 4 Galilean moons that we just looked at. Then you go into the 19th century when you got your telescopes were getting bigger and better. Dozens of smaller Jovian moons have been discovered and have received the names of lovers of conquest, daughters of the Roman god Jupiter, of its Greek equivalent Zeus. The Galilean moons are by far the largest and most massive objects to orbit Jupiter, with the remaining 63 moons in its rings together comprising just 0.003% of the total orbiting mass. They look like asteroids. It looks like that as its orbit, which we talked about, comes closer to the sun and it gets further away, and it's the only planet that does not have its orbital center within the sun itself. But the Sumerians had called Jupiter NIBIRU, and also Mulababa, which means bright sun-like star. NIBIRU simply means ferry, ferryman, or ford. Micus Nibiru is the toll one has to pay for crossing the river. And there will be a toll to pay if this thing crosses the asteroid belt. And is another title for Jupiter as it changes position and crosses the sky. It's a very unusual orbit. The Star of Babylon and Marduk frequently spoke of the inscriptions, it is Jupiter. The Babylonians had used a 12-year orbit of Jupiter along the ecliptic to define the constellations of the zodiac. It's actually about 11.82 years, I think, as far as orbital time. And this planet has also represented the god Marduk. We talked about this before. Marduk is the chief god to emerge in Babylon, which has defeated Tiamat, the serpent of chaos. You can go through and read this. I've got videos about it. But here, this 6-sided star on these ancient Sumerian tablets, with you see the orbital moons around it and other planets. And as this spins and gets closer and closer to the asteroid belt, what happens? But it matches the second pinnacle of Jupiter in Hebrew. The first pinnacle had 9 points, but the second pinnacle, if you go back and look at it, matches this perfect. And it means Jupiter. That's what you're seeing in the top left of this ancient Sumerian tablet. Went back, and the Phoenicians understood this. Everyone called this Jupiter, and it could come in close enough, and it has in the past, to not only disturb the asteroid belt, but send them cascading into the inner solar system. These are some of the other planets, moons. And a lot of them are elongated. They look like asteroids in the close-up images that Juno is sending back now. Think about this now. We're getting into some orbital mechanics. 1 AU is the distance from the Earth to the Sun. 3.2 AUs is the average distance of the asteroid belt from the Sun. But it's almost 1 AU wide. And you're talking about an AU being 99 million miles, roughly. And you say, well, Jupiter and its moons are much further than that. Well, not really. Let's take a look at some of the things here. First of all, you've got Ceres, Vesta, Pallas, and Hygiea are the largest asteroids that we know about. But there are over 200 that are over 100,000 meters in diameter, and 0.7 to 1.7 million asteroids with a diameter of 1,000 meters or more. Look at this, guys. This will explain it very clearly. Jupiter. Then you've got Mars, then Earth. So you've got to realize where we're at as far as the asteroid belt, where Mars is at, and that the closest that the planets get, Jupiter to Earth, they're saying is 365 million miles. But it almost doubles that because of this unusual wobble. In other words, Jupiter's gets almost, goes from 365 million to 601 million miles. And remember, that's not just an ellipsoid orbit. The Sun and the Jupiter have a very strange orbital relationship because the center of gravity of Jupiter is not within the Sun. It's the only planet in the solar system, but many don't consider it a planet. They consider it a fell star. Look at your Trojans. These are not within the white band that it is the asteroids. That's, you're going from 3.2 to about 3.6 difference, not very much between Jupiter's closest approach to the Sun and to Earth and where it gets to the asteroid belt. Plus, look at the Trojans in the green, guys, and the Hildas in the brown. Jupiter crosses those anyway. Then it scatters them with its 64 plus or 67 plus moons. But located between Mars and Jupiter, the belt ranges in distance between 2.2 and 3.2 astronomical units, nearly 1 AU wide, 99 million miles. 329 million to 478 million kilometers. It's 1 AU thick. That's the distance between the Earth and the Sun. Now, Saturn, look at these little charts. You've got Saturn is 88.2 million miles from the Sun. The Earth is 92.96. That's 1 AU. Mars is 141.6 million miles, or about 1.5, not quite 1.5 AU. So, let's look at this. The distance between the Earth and Jupiter at its closest point is 3.9 AU. It's the asteroid belt gets within 3.2 AU. So now in part 2 of this video will be the timing of when Jupiter will be the closest to the Sun and the closest to the Earth, and the Earth will be where you see this blue dot, not over in the chart, or slightly behind that, because what you would be trying to determine, and NASA may well know this with the asteroid missions and the things like that we're seeing. They may well know, have already went through with the supercomputers and done what needs to be done and shown to the public. But showing the orbital patterns, the timing of the possible collisions, and the closest approach of Jupiter to the asteroid belt itself, then to Earth and to the Sun. But look at the size of some of these asteroids within the asteroid belt compared to Earth. Think about that. Pretty impressive size, and you get those kicking around like pool balls on a at the break of a pool tournament or a pool game, guys. Nothing pretty can happen from it. Now, if you want to see what the ancients call NIBIRU, and you want to know the truth about it, we're going to have part 3 of this. But tonight, 90 minutes before sunrise, looking east, you'll see Arcturus, Jupiter rising in the angle with the moon rise. And you can see all through October the different locations. But remember, the reason I say it's important is because if we're not paying close attention to what's very close to our planet, what has been called NIBIRU in the past, and study it for ourselves, because we don't get that much information. Think about it. From the government, from NASA, things like that, we get what they want us to know. So in many times, and in the past, we've seen it in the last 3 or 4 years, we have to dig it up ourselves. And we're going to dig this up. So any of you guys that have got a PhD in orbital mechanics, let me know what you think about it. But we're going to, part 3 will be going into those times and possibilities, because they don't want the people of Earth to know about this timing. People would give up. As far as paying taxes and things like that, they would start going into a survival mode, ignoring the government. But we're watching it, guys. It's a heads up. Be safe.